Welcome in, everybody, to Fandom NFL. I am your QB1 and host, Joe Pisapia. And as I promised you earlier today, when our first video came out live, that we would have a special guest joining us as well, which I'm very excited about because we like to talk football here. And it's funny when weird stories around the NFL start to impact our fantasy as well. And this story just continues to go on and on. And as my guest was just talking about before we came on, every time you peel back another layer of the onion, something seems to stink a little worse. And of course, we're talking about the Matt Miller saga. And our guest today, from the Last Man Standing podcast, too, which you should go check out for sure, Tony Farmer, who I was referred to when I was looking for guests about this, and I've started watching the content. And Tony, it's been spectacular, I gotta tell you, first of all. And thank you so much. You were the first official guest here on the channel, and you said you would come on when I had 3 subscribers, and now we've got almost 500 we're closing in on. So I just want to thank you, first of all, for taking a shot on a new show. So thanks, buddy.
Yeah, happy to be here, man. Looking forward to getting into this with you. As you said, it is a fascinating story, and it's captivated my attention. And I feel like as the days roll by, more and more people are getting interested in it.
I know I am too, and it's weird because it does feel like, especially if you were in the football, betting, fantasy kind of Twitterverse or social media verse, it's a story you kind of know. But when I talk about it to anybody outside of that sphere, they don't quite understand what's happening. They've heard some things, but they don't quite get it. So I want to kind of start at the beginning for those who might be still new to this story or don't really have all of it, because it is odd. It is fascinating. It is strange. And as somebody who has run a charity league for St. Jude's for fantasy football the last 5 years, I can tell you it's frustrating as hell because I always make sure that any league that I run, I show everybody the screenshot of the donation we make. And every single time somebody wins, and I got to say, it's never been me. I never win my own charity league. They always end up just donating the rest to St. Jude's too, which I love. And
That's
that's
sweet.
when you do in good leagues with good people. But
Yeah.
let's start from the beginning here and start at one. So walk us through the Matt Miller saga, because this is a reporter from ESPN. A lot of people, who still might not quite know what's going on here. He has an accident, an unfortunate accident with a car accident a couple months ago in June. Let's start there and walk us through.
Yeah, so he gets into a devastating car accident, one that, according to him, requires the loss of an arm. He gets amputated, airlifted from the scene of the accident, and, shortly after goes on social media, and there's a lot of sympathy. He explains, how he had to get, blood pumped into his body, he lost his arm, etc. And a GoFundMe starts. And the GoFundMe starts, I forget the exact amount originally, but I think it was like around 25,000 or something like that.
It got
And
up to 50 from what I just saw
yeah,
on the internet before we came
and
on.
the limit kept
51.
going up. You got a goal for a fundraising goal, and then once I hit that, it went up a little bit, right? And that's when people started speaking up. That's when we started seeing people come out of the woodwork and say, "You're a liar, you're a scammer," right on the comments on social media. And it caused this strange cognitive dissonance effect, because there's this very sympathetic figure who apparently just lost his arm and was just in this terrible accident. And all these people are saying bad things about him. And it's like, hey, give the guy a break. He just went through this really hard time. But then as more time has gone on, it's starting to look like there may have been this scam, multiple scams actually, that have been going on. And eventually the Missouri Attorney General has actually stepped in and said, we've gotten 26 complaints from people, and we're now investigating this from a financial fraud type situation. And I've spoken to many people who say that they've been defrauded in some way. And one of the first questions I ask them is, hey, have you filed a claim with the Attorney General? And almost all of them say no. So that tells me there's a lot more than 26 people who feel that they've been negatively impacted by Matt Miller.
And on this new channel, again, we're always talking about football related things, and the crossover here with fantasy football, which is again our kind of main deal over here on the new channel, is really fascinating. So basically, what he's been doing, just as Tony kind of laid out there, he was setting up these charity leagues, getting people to invest in them, and then never paying them out. So everybody's wondering, where is the money? Where are the things going on? ESPN came out recently and said that they're, kind of suspending him when they're going through all of this, legal issues and legal question marks and everything that's going on. So where do we stand now with all of this when it comes to this individual, when it comes to what ESPN is going to do? I mean, ESPN's been a busy place today. I'm sure you've seen a lot of the news of all the people that they have let go, which is kind of stunning. Now he hasn't officially been let go, correct? Like he wasn't part of this bloodletting over there at ESPN, which is kind of interesting. He's just kind of suspended still. Were you surprised about that?
A little bit, and that news came out before the news that you alluded to about people being fired and losing their jobs. And so Matt kind of framed it as this sort of mutually agreed upon leave of absence sort of thing, and ESPN has said that they'll comment on it when it's appropriate to comment on it. My point is, ESPN, it was appropriate for you to comment on this way before the accident, because we now have evidence in the Athletic article that one of the players in the fantasy football league, who happened to be a lawyer, actually reached out and emailed ESPN and told them that this was happening. I spoke to a gentleman who called ESPN customer service, and they said, yes, we'll share this information with our supervisors. You should contact the police. And that's when the crap really hit the fan, because he then went into these fantasy leagues, and I provided the screenshots and said, hey guys, you might want to consider calling the police. And what Matt Miller did at that point, which I find fascinating, he responded to that accusation with what, in my opinion, was a little gaslighting. He said, there's no way that Sleeper, which was the app that was hosting these fantasy leagues, would know anything about my account, because this individual said that he talked to Sleeper, and Sleeper essentially called him a scam artist and said he's not actually locked out of his account as he's claiming. He hasn't been hacked. He's been banned, and here's why. And Matt Miller kind of doubled down and was like, no, that's not true. And that's when the crap really started hitting the fan as well.
And then I saw yesterday you posted in a video where there was one user on Sleeper that seemed to be in all of these leagues. Am I correct in this assumption? So talk about that, because that, again, you keep peeling back. You're peeling back the onion, you peel back the next one, and you keep discovering all of this weirdness. So have we figured out yet, is this account attributed to him? Is it someone he knows that's kind of helping front these leagues? What have we found out about that one person that doesn't seem to be in any other leagues except the ones that he's running, which is a little off?
Yeah, the person that you're referring to, the screen name is Mello Esquire. And what we know is that his brother had a Twitter account called Mello Esquire. And that Twitter account is now called Mello. It's no longer called Mello Esquire, and it's also private, by the way. So it appears that perhaps his brother was in 38 of these fantasy leagues. Now, keep in mind, these are dynasty leagues. Your audience knows fantasy football. Dynasty leagues provide a little more attention than just a standard league.
And long-time investment. It's a rolling investment, right? You have people sometimes pay a year ahead in case you lose somebody, so you can fill the spot and you're not behind. That's the thing. He knew it was it wasn't even a short-term redraft grift. It was a dynasty grift, which even makes it more odd that he could pull it off.
It's unbelievable. But one of the things that you need to pull it off, in my opinion, if this is indeed a scam, I want to be careful with the alleged language, etc., is you need people to backfill leagues, because if the leagues don't get filled up, then you can't have a fantasy league with 5 people. People aren't going to want to do that. People aren't going to agree to give you money to do that. So I believe, in my opinion, it appears that that's one of the purposes of the Mello Esquire account, was to help fill these leagues. And in yesterday's video, I identified 2 more accounts. M and M, that's spelled EMMAND EMM, which, by the way, happens to be his initials and the initials of several other people in his family, right?
Here's the thing, Tony, here, I got to stop you there for a second, because in this world we live of artificial intelligence, where you can create all, if you're not a very creative person and you have some trouble coming up with it, you would think at least you could plug in some stuff to ChatGPT or somewhere, and it would somehow find a way to give you some more interesting screen names instead of your initials if you're trying to hide something like that. That's the thing. It's the patheticness of the grift that is equally mind-blowing to the grift itself for me.
And I've got, along those lines, I've got one better for you. There's another person who is in the 3rd most amount of leagues, named Willie Cole. All one word, capital W, capital C, Willie Cole. They were in, I've got this document on my Twitter, I want to say it was like 9 different of these leagues. And guess what? I went on his Facebook of the brother, and I found someone by the name of William Cole. They've all got their arms around him, and they're saying they're the 3 best friends in the world. So do I know 100% sure that that guy controlled the Willie Cole account? Of course not. We can never be 100% sure, but it's sure looking like Matt Miller was filling these leagues with personal friends and apparently his brother, perhaps. And then people say, oh, well, what's the big deal about that? Well, was he charging them money? I don't think so, because I also posted the win-loss record of these guys, and they don't do very well. They're absent owners. I've shown screenshots where they don't set their lineups. And so they're getting into these leagues, and it's not the grift isn't to get them into these leagues and win so that they get the money. Perhaps they're getting into these leagues so that the leagues can fill, so that you can have as many leagues as possible. And so that's what it appears might be happening.
Like fillers, basically, to keep the grift going, and and also you start to know people if they interact with each other in these sleeper chats and things like I'm in a couple dynasty leagues, right? You interact with people, you feel like you get to know like that's a human being and stuff like that, and then if you can continue that pattern elsewhere with like a little core group, if 3 of every 10 people is this little group, it's very easy to give that sense of community and its reality, which is just odd. Pepper, you're nailed it here. My fantasy team is now going to be Matt Miller because I plan on taking everyone's money this year. That is a great comment. And for more great comments like that, obviously, I'm going to reward somebody. We just launched today, got 2 shows today. I appreciate Tony coming on here. He was so nice to come on and talk about this topic. And I have got some more questions for him about it. In the meantime, remember, when you subscribe to the channel, when you drop your likes in there, when you drop your comments, we're trying to get to 1,000 subs so we can monetize this bad boy, because we can't monetize until we get to 1,000. Step 1, monetize. Step 2, it's like the underpants gnomes in South Park. I don't know what step 2 is. Step 3 is profit. That's all I know. And if you get that reference, then we can be friends. That's how I put it out there. So again, Zay Flowers autographed jersey up for grabs. We want you to get this. Subscribe, like this, comment below. Really good stuff here with Tony. Tony, the next thing I want to ask you is why? Why did you decide to do this? Because I know you're a busy guy. You got your podcast. You've got a lot of other things going on. You're doing the circus stuff. You're doing all this stuff. What was it about this that seemed to grab you and all of a sudden take you down this road? I don't know. Did you have a journalism background? Was this something where you just decided you just couldn't stop it? It was like this incredible guilty pleasure show where you just can't stop watching Love Island because it's such a train wreck, right? I want to say car accident, but I feel like that's in bad form. But at the same time, maybe it's just funny and we can laugh at it and it's not too soon. Why did you continue to go down this rabbit hole, and why does it continue to take you down? What is it about this story for you?
Yeah, it's a good question. So I do have a journalism background. I've worked for a couple different Gannett newspapers. They at one time owned USA Today and a bunch of newspapers.
Yes, sir.
Used to write for SI.com as well. And so that is in me. And when I see journalistic outlets like ESPN behaving in a very curious, I would say suspicious manner, that puts my antenna up and that makes me more curious about it. As I said earlier, they were very slow to react to the Matt Miller situation. And not only that, since it's taken place, ESPN has investigative reporters on their staff. They could have looked into this. They could be digging.
It feels like they should put their own 30 for 30 out on this.
Seriously,
like,
absolutely.
At some point.
Yeah. So to answer your question, it's the suspicious behavior of not only people in the media, but people in the league, beat writers, etc., who don't seem to want to give this story a lot of attention. I brought up the fact that Patrick Mahomes has a loose connection to this story, right?
Okay, let's get into that. So for those people who don't know this part, because again, every side, it's like a side quest, right? Every time you start to look to the left or right, all of a sudden it takes another strange turn. And this one with the Patrick Mahomes, where he was donating autographed items and things like that for these leagues. And how did that connection happen?
Yeah, I've found at least 5 items that have been autographed by Patrick Mahomes that have either been used in an auction format by Matt Miller or as sort of a carrot to, hey, if you win this league, you get this, those sort of things. And it does appear that Matt Miller has a close personal friendship with Patrick Mahomes. I say that because I dug up the tweets and I see Matt Miller saying, I love you to Patrick Mahomes, and Patrick Mahomes responding to that in a pleasant manner. I see Matt Miller calling Patrick Mahomes his homie, and I see Patrick Mahomes responding to that in a pleasant manner. I've posted tweets where Patrick Mahomes and Matt Miller are talking about Matt Miller adopting a dog, and they're giving movie recommendations. And
maybe they should get a summer house for, the 2 of them go away and get a nice little Airbnb, hang out a little bit,
And by the way, while we were all trying to figure out who Mello Esquire was, Patrick Mahomes has a 2018 tweet where he tweets at Matt Miller's brother. So it appears that they have a close personal friendship. It appears that Patrick Mahomes was providing Matt Miller with autographed memorabilia. Now, some people may say, hey, Tony, how do you know he got that stuff from Pat? Maybe he got that from an agent, or Pat was unaware, or Pat was not involved. I found a tweet where Pat offered him an autographed helmet. So it's not a stretch to say that Patrick Mahomes knew that he was supplying this information to Matt Miller. Now, I want to be very clear about what my point is. I'm not saying there's any wrongdoing from Patrick Mahomes and that Patrick Mahomes should be
Sure,
at
sure.
all.
A lot of these guys just hear about this stuff and then they want to
Yes,
just help out a good cause, and
absolutely.
and they take advantage of good players who have a good
Yes,
intentions, and that sucks. That's one of the worst
yes.
parts about this.
Patrick Mahomes could very well be a victim in this situation because he was
Mhm.
taken advantage of for all we know. However, but what I am saying though, what I want to be clear on is someone should ask Patrick Mahomes about this. If for no other reason, if there wasn't the Mello Esquire tweet and there wasn't all this memorabilia, a close friend of his is getting investigated by the Attorney General in Missouri. If I think it's fair game, it's a fair journalistic question to just ask Patrick Mahomes about this, but nobody's asking him. And again, that's one of those things that makes me curious about this story because the media is behaving in a very strange way. It reminds me of the Rossini-Vrabel situation where you had similar things. ESPN didn't want to report on it for a while, perhaps because Diana Rossini used to work for ESPN. And so it kind of reminds me of that a little bit.
Feels like everybody used to work for ESPN just a couple of hours ago. Uh,
Yeah.
Tony, I got another question for you, and I want to ask you this because where do they go from now with this? Now, I understand you bring up these charges, right? So there's like 26 or so civil consumer complaints from what I've seen online so far. I understand ESPN being a place that wants to potentially see it out, and because if you fire a guy and you're not supposed to fire a guy, especially this guy who just had an accident, that's another can of worms where they sue you and you're a big corporation. So I get that. I don't look at this as they are not offended by Matt Miller's actions. I look at this more of they are covering their own rear end a bit from a legal standpoint. Do you get that same feeling? And how much longer can they afford literally to do it as more of these oddities come out?
Yeah, it's speculation on my part. Of course, I don't have any close connections with folks at ESPN, but I would agree with your assessment that that seems very plausible. And again, they were put on notice. At least two, maybe more, alleged victims reached out to ESPN before any of this was public, and he continued to write for them. He continued to work for them. So I do think that there may be like a liability concern with ESPN. Um, who knows how many alleged victims are going to kind of come out of this? Where we go from here, I think the next shoe to drop, besides the sleuthing that's happening on the internet with people like myself, is that Attorney General report and that action that comes out. I did speak with the investigating trooper who is investigating the accident itself. He told me that the accident investigation is closed and he would not make any comment on any potential enforcement. He said either way. So I suppose theoretically, it's possible that there could be a legal outcome from the accident itself, depending on the results of that, right? Like why the accident took place, were any laws broken. There's that shoe to drop, if it ever will. And then there's the investigation by the AG and what they find. The AG has said that they are not looking into the GoFundMe page. They're like, we acknowledge this accident did happen. He set up the GoFundMe page. That's not one of our concerns. The concern is these fantasy leagues that people are looking into. But with Matt Miller, there's so many charities too. Like they're looking into the fantasy leagues. If you dig into this guy online, you'll find charity golf tournaments. You'll find these.
Okay, now so that I didn't even know that. So
Yeah.
there's other grifts besides the ones online.
Well,
So he's setting up charity golf tournaments. Do the people not play golf, or does the money just never show up at the charity?
good question. I don't know. Now, theoretically, let's be fair to Matt Miller for a moment. We don't know that the charity golf thing was a grift. Theoretically, he could have 10 charities and only 7 of them are grifts and 3 are to make the other ones more believable. You know what I'm saying? Like, we don't know for sure. I'm trying to be as fair as possible, but there's a lot
You're a
of
good man, Tony. You're a better man than I am. I got to tell you. We've
there's a
known each
lot
other for about 19 minutes now, and I think that you're a better guy than I am. I think I would just assume if you're going to grift one charity that, I mean, maybe that's a supervillain mentality. Like I'll do one good one and then the rest I can grift because I know
Sure.
maybe.
Maybe it started off with good intentions and maybe the first 2 years he was doing it and then he realized, oh, I can get away with. I mean, who knows? There's a lot of possibilities here, but there's charity golf tournaments. He was also selling these like packages to people where like he would do these 5-hour scouting classes and like help you become an
That I
NFL
saw.
scout.
That I did see, which again
It-
is another one too, which sucks, especially young people coming up and, who admire the on-air personality so much. I know you and I probably grew up the same way. If one of those personalities was offering you a hand up and a way up and ended up taking your money and stiffing you on the trading or the experience, it's awful. It's pretty
yeah,
awful.
yeah,
And it's a reminder to everybody out there too that and I know we're a fantasy football community, and I'll give you for instance, right? Here's one of my favorite watchers here for years and years. Ben Rod, huge baseball, huge NFL person, had no idea about this story, right? I feel like there's still this weird Twitter football bubble where this story exists in a massive fashion, but I don't think it's out there in the sphere quite enough and just how crazy it is. So I'm just telling everybody out there right now. When someone does a league for charity, that's a great thing. Scott Fishbowl is an amazing thing. Scott's a friend of mine. He's been running that forever. It's incredible what they've done, and I'm very happy that I was in kind of on the ground floor of helping that. With the Black Book every year, we do donation day around that, which I will be making our donation there. I run a charity league for St. Jude's. I'm in the one for CBS Fantasy, the CBS Fantasy guys, Fantasy Football Today, Azer and Richard and Jamie Eisenberg. Their charity's real, everybody. I know because I'm involved with it. But you got to be careful. And even if somebody has a big name or is an industry person, you can't just necessarily blindly go into these things just because you think they're reputable. And now I think it's a very sound reminder that just because someone's famous doesn't mean they're reputable. I don't know. Maybe that's the big takeaway here, Tony. I'm not sure what else we could take away.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. I mean, I've seen the communication between Sleeper and some of these concerned fantasy owners. And at one point, some of them were like, I don't even know if this is Matt Miller. What if someone else is pretending to be Matt Miller? I do think that his reputation helped sort of slow down the process. If he didn't have the ESPN name behind him and nobody knew who he was and he was taking the exact same steps, I suspect people might have complained a little bit earlier or spoke up a little bit sooner.
I like this. Larry wants us to start our own YouTube channel for true crime investigating around sports. I'm for it. I think it'd be fun.
I love it.
I mean, why not? So
there's a need. Hey, it's us and Pablo Torre, and then there's a big drop off after that. There's not a lot of people.
There is. Pablo seems like a decent guy, but I mean, it's good to support your independent. Speaking of that, talk about the Last Man Standing podcast. Talk about your Substack too. I know you've got that, so plug away all of those things you've got going there too, because I know you got stuff in that content space for betting and many other things. And I want everybody who might not know about Matt Miller to know a little bit more about Tony Farmer, not just the sleuth that was able to join us today on the Fandom Show.
Yeah, I appreciate that. So Last Men Standing, you can follow on Twitter at LastMenPod. And it's a circa Survivor podcast. We follow a very specific NFL Survivor pool. You guys are familiar with NFL Survivor pools. I'll give you a quick rundown real quick. No point spread. You pick a team the first week. If they win, you advance. If they lose, you don't, but you can't use that team again. So it requires a lot of strategy. With this Circus Survivor pool, there's a Thanksgiving week and a Christmas week. So you have to go 20-0. It's a $1,000 entry.
Wow.
And the guaranteed prize pool is $20 million. That means if only 10 million worth of people sign up, the casino actually loses money on the contest. There's no rake. And what that means is that every dollar that goes into signups and registration for the contest goes back out to the players. So you can imagine you're watching an NFL Sunday slate, and you need the Buccaneers to win so that you can advance. And the Cowboys, if they lose, 43% of the field's going down, and you're that much closer to $20 million. So it creates the ride of a lifetime, and I've created an entire podcast around that show. And I think it's valuable for people that aren't even in Circus Survivor, that are in their own family Survivor leagues. It's a lot of fun. And a lot of people can't afford the $1,000 entry, so they'll get friends together. They'll fly out to Vegas. They'll sign up for the contest. And I could talk your ear off about that contest.
I love it. I had two friends that did this contest. Once you started talking about it, I knew two friends who split the entry a couple years ago and did it. And I think they made it to like week 7 or something like that. This was like, I think 2 years ago. And I love Survivor stuff personally. I think it's super fun. I think people way overthink it. And when there's no spread involved too, to me, I find it a bit easier. People want to overthink it. They're like, oh, well, I want to save this team for week 12. I'm like, what do you do it? Save it for week 12. How about you survive week 1? Just survive every week you can. That's literally the thing. And the overthinking that goes on, especially when the bigger money is in there. It's fascinating. I used to be in a big one with my friends and family, and I won 2 years in a row, and then they shut it down. And I was very upset. They just didn't want to play anymore. And I was like, why? Why can't we do it? Like, no, it's no fun. So yeah, it's nice when your own family kicks you out of things,
I'll tell you a story real quick. I was in Circus Survivor. There were 80 people left. I think the prize pool for this one was about 15 million or 12 million. Mm-hmm. And there was 80 people left, and I had 2 of the final 80 entries. and both my starting quarterbacks got hurt in the same weekend, and that's how I went out. It was it was a rough
And
one.
that's the thing, like you can't control it, right? The injuries that
Yes.
happen, the weirdness, you know, like you said, quarterback goes down in the game, the
Ah,
complete complexion changes, so all the good work goes out the window.
yeah.
That sounds like a podcast worth listening to, everybody. Now, I've seen some highlights of it because again, I've been stalking your Twitter handle for a couple weeks now,
Fair enough.
with this story, and I appreciate you coming on, especially first day of the channel. Amazing stuff. I hope that we're at the end of the Matt Miller saga. I feel like we're not. And I feel like you and I will be chatting again maybe in a couple weeks if you have the time to find whatever weird twist and turn this takes. But also, maybe we talk a little Survivor Pool with you next time if you have some time to do it. So, again, check out Tony over at Tony's Market Tips on X. You can find him there. And again, the podcast, Last Men Standing, where they go through every day. That is a sweat, man. That is a sweat and a half. I love it. I love the idea. I love everybody joining us today. Again, subscribe to the channel, drop your comments below, like this video. That's all you got to do. That'll do it for me, Joey P. We'll see you next time, kids. This has been Fandom NFL. Good stuff, Tony. Great stuff.